Life isn't fair, is it? Doesn't appear to be very fair. Because, I mean, this is how your story ended in that regard, but it could have...
I don't know if an adventure is fair. I don't even know if that's what we want. Now, what are we built for? We're built for maximal challenge. And that isn't the way we view ourselves in the modern world. We view ourselves as built for pleasure. We view ourselves as built for consumption, or for safety, or for maybe for egotistical self-aggrandizement and fame. Those are, look, all of those things are better than their absence, let's say. What are we built for? I think we're built for maximal challenge. Well, humility is starting where you are. That's what humility is. And it's annoying because, like if your life is a mess, then you have to see that you're the person in that mess. And then you have to understand that your first attempt to redress the mess might not be something you're particularly proud of, I mean, I saw this lots in my clinical practice where people the first steps they had to take to put things in order were pretty embarrassing. It's like, really? That's all I can do? Hey, man, uphill is better than downhill. And okay, so it lays out a view of the world. Progress, regression. So even if you have to start small, you accrue success exponentially. You accrue defeat exponentially too. That's the abyss that is hell. You start going downhill, you go downhill faster and faster. Start going uphill, you go uphill faster and faster. So even if you have to start small, or even painfully small, which is highly probable, especially if you're trying to tackle something that's really plagued you, it doesn't really matter.
What is self-belief in this context? Because so many people are in search of two words, I think that's three words, but self-belief and confidence.
Yeah.
And in this context of that small task, how is that building my self-belief or confidence?
Yeah. Because you watch yourself do it.
And that does what to me?
Well, look, if you see someone, a friend, who is continually, incrementally improving, you're gonna, oh, that's admirable. Well, you see the same thing in yourself. You have to develop an opinion of yourself the same way you would develop an opinion of someone else. So now, and I'm not hypothesizing about this, by the way, we know this clinically. If I want to truly help you build your confidence, rather than merely readjusting the words you say about yourself, which would be something like self-esteem, which is something that doesn't even exist, by the way. It's just a pathological concept altogether. You want confidence, okay? More to the point, you want the confidence that's based in competence. Otherwise, it's narcissistic. Okay, so how do you develop that? Well, you watch yourself exceed your limits. And then you think, oh, look at that. There's something in me that can exceed my limits. That's your true self. That's a good way of thinking about it.
And in doing so, you actually realize that limits exist and that you imposed one on yourself in the first place.
Well, that's one of the things you can realize, certainly, that also you don't exactly know where the limits are. It's like, oh, I exceeded that. It's like, okay, well, now what? What's the upward arc of exceeding limits? That's Jacob's ladder. I would say this is the promise of the kingdom of God. That's one way of thinking about it. There's no upward limit.
No matter the odds, he's completely devoted to this idea that I'm not what I used to be, and I'm not where I want to be. But I have the opportunity and the privilege and the capacity to develop, to go and become something, to evolve, to move from point A to point B. We have an unlimited amount of potential in us. It's called stored up potential. And the only way to unlock stored up potential is to believe. Because when you believe, nobody can convince you otherwise. You are a person of vision and valor and discipline. You got this thing. Why not you? Stop looking for everybody else to do it. Stop looking for everybody else to support it. Believe in it, to hand it to you, to point you in the right direction. You have everything you need right now in this moment to take a step forward. So do it. You're talented enough. You're hungry enough. Do it. Do it. All you got to do is take one step and you're no longer where you are. And you're no longer where you used to be. Just take a step forward. You got to come to the realization that you're not going back, that you're not going to lead an ordinary life, that you're going to look crazy, that you're going to look out of your mind to most people, and that you're not naive, neither are you cynical. You are determined, you are dedicated, and you are committed. It's the crazies that make history. It's the people that are willing to look foolish in front of everybody to accomplish that one thing. The problem with many of you is that you're surrounded by people who ask you the wrong questions. Why do you sweat? Why are you bleeding for it? Why are you losing sleep over it? Some people are never going to get it until you lift the trophy in the air. Some people are never going to get it until you lift the diploma in the air. Some people are never going to get it until you win. Then they're going to ask you, how did you do it? You're going to look foolish. You're going to look like the guy who's lost his mind to your art. If you're going to punch through, if you're going to have an aim and hit, then there are going to be seasons and chapters and moments in your life where nobody is going to understand why you're not sleeping like everybody else. See, when you step into agreement with a thing, when you see the possibility, when you see what you could be, and you come into agreement with it, and you step into the awareness that says, what I've done has gotten me where I am. And if I'm going to accomplish more, and if I'm going to do more and see more and become more, I must give my all to this. I'll look mad if I have to. I'll look crazy if I have to. It is right at that point where I shock the world, and I'm gonna give it everything I have. Call me crazy now. Call me legend later. Everybody who has ever struggled with believing that it's you, it's always been you. You are the first pick. You are the only option. And there will never be another way. Believe that you're that valuable.
When you were growing up in Longview, Texas, is this what you dreamed would happen to you someday?
No, man, not at all. Never really thought about it. I don't know what I wanted to do at that time.
Growing up, who were your influences? Did you see someone growing up on TV or the movies who you thought, like, that person inspires me?
Look, the first step that leads to our identity in life is usually not, I know who I am. That's not the first step. The first step's usually, I know who I am not.
Working off of the truth is a wonderfully liberating incentive for me. It's more than a blueprint. It's the blueprint of what to work off of and a responsibility to uphold.
And so, being a good man's a lot harder, for good reason. You're not gonna be most popular, not gonna be always most affable.
Are you really chasing the things that have meaning in your life? Because things that have meaning take maintenance. They break down. It hurts. It sucks. We get bruised.
We get older and the black and whites turn to gray, and then there's a great word, compromise, we all say, which is such a mature thing to do. And the beauty of ignorance, those things that we believed in. I've gotten away with so many things because of my ignorance. I'd be dead 14 times in this life if I wouldn't have been ignorant of the situation I was in.
A good man's not looking for trouble, but if it comes, and if he or something he cares about knows we're susceptible, a good man does what he can to do to stop that.
These are the crumbs. They come in the form of regret, guilt, and remorse. You leave crumbs today, they will cause you more stress tomorrow.
But now that you're here, one of the top actors of the country,
Yeah,
it's a good place, huh?
great place. Yeah.
Would you change anything?
Would I change anything?
Trying to think, I'm going through my head right now, where have I sacrificed my own character to get ahead so then to be perceived as, and I know I've done it many times. Being a marketeer too, you know, gotten away with stuff, played games and da-da-da-da-da. Kiss the fire and walk away whistling.
A little Icarus light.
Yeah. So I grew up only knowing sort of the courage of the persistence. Be resilient, endure, get up, dust yourself off, go. The problem with that, the Achilles heel with that is if you get up and you have the courage to keep on going every time and get up and dust yourself off, you make the same mistakes each time around because you never backed up to have what I've now learned and still learning is the courage to go, no, I'm going to let some people pass me in the race right now because I'm going to look at why I keep stepping in that damn same pothole and twisting my ankle, the same spot.
And that requires, I think, a lot of courage and hope and self-belief and faith in order to let go of something good for the chance at something that you think could be great.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people wish that they had a little bit more fuel for.
It was a big risk, it was a big chance, and it was no guaranteed return ticket. It was a one-way ticket possibly to...
One-way ticket to a dead end.
Or to something new, but a one-way ticket to a dead end in Hollywood. It's an actor for sure. Here we go. If I stick with it, this will give me a home base to feel secure in, even though I'm stepping away from what has given me significance for so many years and decades in my life. We're not going to get nerves at the goal line. If we don't know where the goal line is, we're not going to get down the line and go, oh, I pulled the parachute.
Even if it's a $14 million parachute.
Even if it's a $14 million parachute. Making that a choice that was inevitable, that there was no pulling the parachute on, sure as hell helped with the endurance of me being away for what was 20 months. That 20 months was really hard. And I've said it before, that proverbial bottle on the shelf was looking better and better earlier in the day as time went on. I mean, how many more times could I work in the damn garden, man? I'm like, I'm not a gardener for life. I like this, but I gotta, come on, man. I did have a real belief, whether I was tricking myself or not, that there's a bigger pot of gold for me on the other side of this if I just out-endure it. I'll out-endure this so much. And it became a little like the year in Australia. I started to gain pride and honor with the longer the penance went on of being without what I wanted. And I started to be like, well, I'm definitely ain't backing out now, man. I'm 6 months in.
Turns into momentum.
All in a year later, I'm like, I'm a year in, man. This is getting good. Okay, come on.
And then the scary part was I started to entertain the idea of, yeah, man, it may just be how it is now. And that scared me. And then I got angry at that, and I'm still in the midst of some anger with that, which is a bit of that rage thing, which makes me act upon it and go, bullshit. I'm not conceding, and I don't think anyone really wants to concede that that's just the way it is. And if it is the way it is, and the reality is not enough to get off to, let's go to the dream. Let's flip that script. I want to fight against it. So I flipped it and said, let's go to dreams. Let's go to poems, prayers. These are pursuits of an ideal beauty. These are in between the lines. This is in between the math. This is not academic. This is not intellectual. These are ideals that we pursue, the beginner's mind that we have as a child before we know worse. And I don't want to be ignorant. I don't want to be foolishly optimistic. Let's look to those and believe that we can still make those real. Let that bring rhyme to the reason instead of looking to the reason to find the rhyme.
More backbone to hold on and be principled to what I stand for, what I stand against, when it becomes easier and easier to just go with the flow. And I'm not ready to go, let's just go with the flow. I don't want to pick the wrong battles. I'm trying to be discerning and not picking the wrong fights, because I like picking fights and going after challenges. But I'm in a place, I'm kind of like, man, it's tough duty to win the fair fights. And there's a lot of unfair fights out there. And why do I want to spend my time, if I got 24 hours a day, picking unfair fights when I'm busting my ass to win the fair ones?
Well, also picking fights with yourself. You know, you hinted just there at the difficulty of a negative inner voice. You know, you take things seriously, you care about what you're doing, you want to achieve things in this world, which means that you need to have high standards. You need to posit an ideal. But as soon as you posit an ideal, you then begin to compare yourself to that ideal, and often you find yourself lacking because it's an ideal.
Yep. So you see, every day, every week, every month, and every year of my life, my hero's always 10 years away. I'm never gonna be my hero. I'm not gonna attain that. I know I'm not, and that's just fine with me because that keeps me with somebody to keep on chasing.
It's gonna take punk rock, a rage. It's gonna take getting wild. It's not gonna be necessarily logical. It's not gonna be tame. It's not gonna be whispered, I don't think. No emotion gets more shit done than rage. For good or for bad. Seems like rage really moves the needle. You know what I mean? And I think that emotion and that approach shouldn't be thrown out when you're talking about a pursuit of peace or contentment. I mean, it takes sweat equity. It will take blood being drawn. I don't believe that we're as evolved enough species to just behave as we intellectually can agree we should be. I don't see it happening. We can all agree with it. In an open forum, enough of us go back on our own and that ain't what we're doing. You know? It's a good idea. But boy, when we're cornered and what we got's being possibly trespassed on, very primal.
Some lines need to be drawn.
I believe so.
Model the rise, not the result.
I like that.
Model the rise, not the result, because the result is where they're at now. Do not ask Warren Buffett about how long he spends reading the newspaper and poring over old books. That guy was a hustler. He was a hustler when he was young. What did you do when you were at the stage that I am at? Not what do you do now? Because I want to get to where you are. That means I don't do what you do now. I do what you did to get there.
Don't study the result. What was the person doing when they got there? And everybody who's achieved something great was some sort of outlaw.
Yep.
Some sort of hustler. Out of balance, out of whack, dark times. Woo. Still wakes up in the middle of the night and glad they're wearing a mouth guard because they had chipped all their teeth through that fucking nightmare they were having about those things they did back then. I'm one of those.
Without complacency, trust that time is on your side.
Yep.
What do you mean there?
Yeah, man. Don't get ahead or behind it. And I can get in a rush. And I haven't found... Look, and I know how to hustle, and let's go. The clock's ticking. We're all behind. All hands on deck. We got to bust ass. No time for pause. There's no sleep, no nothing. Get the caffeine out. Let's go. Sometimes we got to do that. But that is usually because an unforeseen circumstance has happened, that there's a crisis we got to deal with, or we've procrastinated and I put myself in that position where we got to cram. But it's not those two circumstances. We got to watch ourselves getting ahead of time. And it's on your side. It's a little what I mean about the living longer and living more quality. Time's on our side. And we're forced to think and feel, especially today, with how fast things move, that more productivity, faster pace, more information, faster pace, it's better. We're ahead of time a lot. But time's still moving at the same speed. And they're not given more than 24 hours a day, even though like a lot of people are looking for more. There's not any more unless you just want to change your workday. And some people do. Me, I need my 9.5 hours sleep. If I want to say I'm getting 4 hours sleep and get 5.5 hours more of a workday to be more productive, I would, but I'm not making that trade-off. It's on our side. It's the Lego set, man. And you sit there and you get in a rush, you don't read the directions, you get to the end and you've got 12 pieces left and you're like, shit. Because you got in a hurry. You got ahead of time. Instead of just that feeling of, I've checked out what I need to do and it's all adding up and this thing's built right and the foundation's right and boom, there's the last piece, it fits. Voila. It was with time. Time's on our side. It's not an enemy. The end. Death is not the enemy. I do believe that part of
not in a rush to get there, and we want to stave it off sometimes, and that it can be a screaming fight, and partially denial can help us get there. I understand that, but still, it's on our side. It's going to happen. And since it's going to happen, and that's non-negotiable, might as well go, well, I'm not going to rush to try and make more of it than there is. I want to try and spend the time I got as well as I can to produce, succeed, achieve, or whatever those things are, but also at a pace that I'm me, that I like to dance to. I like the give and the take. I like the reverb. I like the cause and effect of how things are happening at this pace. The rom-com time, that was definitely me doing the work I was doing and only being able to do the work I was doing and offer the roles I was getting in the rom-coms was eating at me. Because I felt like life is good, man. I make good money. I feel like I can roll out of bed and do one of these tomorrow morning. Well, that's cool. I'm the go-to guy for this. I was countered by, I had met Camilla, fallen in love. She's now pregnant with her first child. My life was extremely vital, and I was alive, cried harder, laughed louder, felt more joy, all those things. But my work was like, all right. And I was like, well, I wish my work could be as challenging or as vital as my life. And I remember looking in the mirror going, well, be glad right now. Appreciate that it's not the other way around. But can I have my work challenge my lifestyle in this vitality? Yeah, if I do some dramas I want to do, well, those aren't coming. All right, if I can't do what I want to do, let me quit doing what I was doing. Now that was, it was definitely courageous. I did honestly think I'd written myself a one-way ticket out of Hollywood. People close to me, basically almost everybody besides my wife, was like, what is your major malfunction, little brother?
You got it made.
Why are you throwing a jackknife in this stuff where you're tripping yourself running downhill, man? You did it. I had my wife and myself to remind myself of that 4 a.m. clarity that I had in tears when I was like, no, I'm rolling the dice. I'm sticking with it. Yeah, man. I did think I wrote myself a ticket out of Hollywood. I did look at other vocations, become a teacher, a wildlife guide. I seriously looked at those things. But over time, and it was about 20 months, it was gone long enough, had found anonymity enough, was not in your living room in a theater in a rom-com. You didn't see me on a beach shirtless. Where is he? Turning down the $14.5 million offer, made people go, oh shit, what's he up to? You don't just step out of Hollywood and enter, unless you turn that down because you got a plan. You got somewhere you want to go. And I think that made me more attractive as a new novel idea. But that was, that risk I think it's fair to say that took a fair amount of courage from me.
For a lot of people, their work feels more vital than their life.
Yeah.
Is that a shiny object mirage that they need to rid themselves of?
If you can and you're willing to, yeah. Look, that's part of why I started writing. But the script flipped on me 5 years ago. I was feeling like my work was more vital than my life. I felt like I was going through the motions more in my life, but I was really getting major life experiences through my work. And so that was a challenge to myself, which led to the writing, which was a more direct experience. Can I put a word down without, it's my script, and without my performance on it, without music, without pictures. So that was an inward journey that I'm still on. Yes, confidence, identity, testing it out, and it can work. Confidence to go, I'm gonna try and pull this off. Maybe get away with it, maybe it won't work. Pulling things off. And I have an innate ability for something that I believe I have the innate ability. And I learned the reason behind that instinct and how to where's the right time, timing. Oh, and it'll work, I think, right here. Who's the audience I'm talking to? Oh, yeah, I'm gonna make a plan for that cell
if it's all sales, or that transaction, or whatever it is, and bam, it hits, and it lands like I wanted it to. Dogs, damn it, was that deja vu? It happened. That's how I saw it. I get confidence from that. I don't think it's what the mystics meant when they were like, be disattached. I think it meant go embrace, but for highs and lows and pains and pleasures, understand that those outward things are not the things to be attached to for your own identity. It's got to be inward first. Enjoy those, partake, but don't become attached to those for your measure.
Even if the world was conspiring against me and my failure was 95% the fault of external occurrences and other people, what did I do that wasn't as good as it could have been, and where did I fail to look so that the probability of my failure was higher? Now, to ask that question, you have to want the answer. That's what it means to knock or to ask or to seek. This is no joke. It's like you have to want to know. And it's a very painful thing to do, because especially if you had given it your all to the degree you were able, and you have reason to be bitter, you're going to be searching for the errors that you still made. And discovering your own errors is always extremely painful, right? Especially if they're errors that you're in love with. And so you have to be willing to strip yourself down. That's what humility means fundamentally. But the advantage is, this is why it's so useful to listen to people. You might find out where you're stupid, and then you could stop being stupid. And so one of the reasons you confess your sins, let's say, is because you want to discover where you're insufficient. Now, it's painful. It's painful to encounter an impediment in the form of someone else's opinion that might show you where you're blind and ignorant, or willfully blind even. But the advantage to that is you can rectify the error, and then as you move forward, you're stronger. One of the things I taught my kids, and I hope at least somewhat successfully, was that you should always ask a stupid question. And that doesn't mean the sort of question that someone who wasn't paying attention would ask. If you're listening to someone and you don't understand what they're saying, and you reveal that, you're revealing your ignorance, and maybe you're in a room full of people and you think you're the only person stupid enough to not get it, which is very rarely the case, by the way. The thing is, though, if you reveal that ignorance to yourself and to the other person, they can rectify it. And if you do that 1,000 times, you're not ignorant anymore. If you ask 1,000 dumb questions and you listen to the answer, then you know 1,000 things, some of them deep, that you didn't know before. So that's the advantage to searching your soul, let's say, for unrequited sins and attempting to atone. That's not a delusion, right? It's an attempt to set yourself right. And so you write an autobiography because you need to know where you are and who you are right now. Because how the hell are you going to plot a pathway to the future unless you know where you are? And then you need to write about the future, because you aren't going to hit something unless you aim at it. That's for sure. And lots of times people won't aim at what they want because they're afraid. The reason they're afraid is because if you specify what you want, you've specified your conditions of failure. You know when you fail. And it's better just to keep it foggy. It's like, well, I don't know if I'm succeeding or failing, but I can't really tell. Well, great, except you can't hit anything you don't aim at. And so the future authoring program is like it's an attempt to have you articulate your character. And so is the past authoring program. Who are you? Important events that have shaped who you are. And you may find that some of that writing makes you emotional. And I would say, if you have a memory that's more than 18 months old, roughly speaking, and when you bring it to mind, it has an emotional impact, especially a negative emotional impact. It's like part of your soul is stuck back there. And I know that's a metaphorical way of thinking about it, but what I mean is that the reason that you still experience the emotion is because you have not solved the problem that situation faced you with. It might be a real problem, like maybe you got tangled up with someone who was really bad, and that's rough, man, because you've got to come up with a theory of malevolence to deal with something like that, and that's no joke. But if it still produces emotion, it means you haven't solved the problem, and your brain is still tagging it as threat. It's a part of your territory that you did not master. Threat, 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 threat. And until you take it apart, and articulation really helps that, writing really helps that, then you're not going to free yourself from its grip. Put yourself together. And then maybe if you put yourself together, you know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you, if you'll admit it. You know there's a few things you could like polish up a little bit, that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, and then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having them be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're like doomed to spend Christmas with. So then you fix yourself up a little bit, kind of humbly, because, you know, God, you're a fixer-upper if there ever was one. And then you got to figure out, well, can you figure out how to make peace with your idiot brother? And probably not, because he's just as dumb as you, so how the hell are you going to manage that? And so then maybe you get somewhere that way, and your family's sort of functioning, and you find out, well, that kind of relieved a little bit of suffering, although it reduced the opportunities for spiteful revenge, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. And so then you get your family together a little bit, and you're a little clued in then, at least a bit, because you've done something difficult that's actually difficult. You're a little wiser, and so then maybe you could put a tentative finger out beyond the family and try to change some little thing without wrecking it. It's like, our society is complex, and we teach our students that they could just fix it. It's like, go fix a military helicopter and see how far you get with that. It's like, what are you going to do? You're like a chimp with a wrench. Whack! Oh, look, it's better. It's like, no, it's not better. Things are complicated, and to fix things is really hard. And you have to be like a golden tool to fix things, and you're not. How do you overcome the suffering of life? Is be a better person. That's how you do it. Well, that's hard. It takes responsibility. And I think, you know, if you said to someone, you want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters. That's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters. So you're going to have to carry that with you. Or do you want to just forget about the whole meaning thing, and then you don't have any responsibility, because who the hell cares? And you can wander through life doing whatever you want, gratifying impulsive desires for how useful that's going to be. And you're stuck in meaninglessness, but you don't have any responsibility. Which one do you want? Well, ask yourself, which one are you pursuing?
I've realized that it's scary when you find a thing that you're going to fully commit yourself to the pursuit of, especially if it's excellence that you're going after, because there's no more room for your inadequacies to hide. There's no more ejector seat, right? I've committed to this.
Commit to at least one thing.
As hard as you can, and see what happens.
I had a rule with my clients, because, you know, you might say, well, I've gone halfway down this path and I found out it's wrong. Well, how do you distinguish that from just giving up? Well, that's a really hard question, right? It's a moral hazard, because it's inappropriate to continue in a direction you now realize to be wrong, but it's also inappropriate to give up and use that rationalization as an excuse. And how do you distinguish?
Especially seeing as we're not transparent to ourselves.
Well, right, exactly. So that is genuinely a moral hazard. You can change course as long as the next thing you do is equally or more difficult, because that's a check against just giving up. So you want to discipline yourself so you can get yourself organized so that you can go in a particular direction, so that when you find the right direction, you can really go in that direction. And that does require an apprenticeship of sorts. And it might not matter in some sense exactly what the apprenticeship is, as long as it is rigorous, right? And so that's sort of a bridge between moral relativism and moral absolutism. There's lots of games you can play. It's not that obvious a priori which is the best game, so that's kind of a morally relative stance. There's multiple playable games. But then the absolute is, yeah, but you have to play one of them. You have to learn to play one of them. You have to become an expert at least one of them. And then that's not a relative proposition. And I believe that's true. That seems to me to be the case. So you want to commit to something. And then when you commit to something, you require yourself to bring all of your disparate components moving in a single direction, united in a single direction. So it's a unifying act. And then once having been unified, well, then you can bring that unity to bear on a variety of different tasks. But you have to bring it together first. So, and that makes sense developmentally. You see children start out as a disparate bundle of motivations and emotions, sort of warring with one another. And then they can integrate that into single games that they can play with themselves. And then they integrate that with games they start to play with other people. And all of that is integration. It's not subjugation, it's not repression. Not if it's a good game, it's integration. You want to get integrated because then you have all the horses that are pulling your chariot pulling in the same direction. And you're much more likely to get to where you want to go then, and also much more likely to specify a good place to go.
Do you think that there's a usefulness in having a nemesis to motivate you? I try to avoid making enemies of people or groups or ideas or...
Don't make unnecessary enemies.
But there is an extra level of fire that gets lit underneath you when you're going up against someone, and I miss it sometimes. There's a price that you pay for peace.
Yeah, well, then you just have to look at yourself harder and find the nemesis, because it's there all the time, right? I mean, there's always parts of yourself that you can overcome. You know, if you need something to grapple with, and you probably do, you can find that. You just look inside, you'll find something to grapple with. You know, inadequacy, weakness, susceptibility to temptation, narcissism, pride, envy, revenge, resentment, frustration, lack of faith, all of that'll keep you occupied if you really grapple with it. And yeah, I mean, that's an ancient theological question. You know, what's up with the devil? Why does the possibility of evil exist? Why is there an eternal adversary? Why would God construct a reality where an adversary exists? And maybe it's because all things considered, a world with an adversary is a better world, just like a garden with a snake in it is a better garden. These things aren't easy to understand. No snake, no necessity to contend with snakes. Right, so why be awake at all? No adversary, no challenge. Why be challenged? Because maybe you're better for the challenge. And maybe that's the challenge, to see if you can be better for the challenge.
But that should be internal.
Well, fundamentally, if it isn't, you'll find it externally, because you'll demonize someone to turn them into Satan so that you can find an adversary. And then that's very unfortunate for you and for them.
That's the problem.
It's just not as big a battle. It's like you battle with someone external who's malevolent, let's say, or you think they are, and usually you've got that mostly wrong, but not always. But if the battle is inside, which is where it's supposed to be, most fundamentally, then it's the ultimate. It is the ultimate challenge.
And that's the infinite game. The external one is
battle between good and evil on a playing field of chaos and order. It's the eternal game. We're built to walk uphill, and when you reach the pinnacle of the hill, you want to stop and appreciate the vision. But the next thing you want is a higher hill in the distance, because it's the uphill climb that it's from the uphill climb that we derive our value. And I mean this technically. So almost all the positive emotion we feel, especially the emotion that fills us with enthusiasm, and that's to be filled with the Spirit of God, by the way, because that's what enthusiasm means. That's experienced in relationship to a goal. You want a goal that you can never attain. You want a horizon of ever-expanding possibility. And so it does happen to people because they've staked their soul on the attainment of an instrumental goal. And it can be a pretty high order goal. It was in your case. But then you think, well, now I'm there. Now what? Well, the answer can't be, well, I'm going to live in the lap of luxury and never have to leave the faith. What do you want to be, a giant infant with a gold bottle? You never have to do anything but lay in your back and suck. It's like, well, you see the problem with that as a conceptualization. It's no, you want to be like an active warrior moving uphill with your sword in hand, and that's dynamic, that's exciting, and that's why so many young men disappear into video games. That's all acted out in the video game. So they have to act that out in their own life. Not that I despise video games, because I don't, but they're not a substitute for life. We kind of experience life as if we're tossed into it, thrown into it. You know, you're male and not female. You're Hindu and not Christian. You're tall and not short. You have an arbitrary range of talents and an arbitrary range of limitations, none of which, in some sense, you chose. It's the cards you're dealt. Now, some of those are cards of privilege. You know, maybe you're born intelligent. Maybe you're born symmetrical. Maybe you're born healthy. Maybe you're born into a culture where it's much easier not to be absolutely deprived. Maybe your parents are rich. And so all of that, in some sense, is unearned. The way you pay for your privilege is with your virtue. I mean that most particularly. You have these opportunities and this existential guilt. And the way you expiate that and atone is by doing your best to live the best possible life you can manage, to speak the truth, to treat people with respect, to abide by the principles of the dignity of the individual, and to put your house in order. And that's how you pay for your unearned privilege. All of us. And we all have our privileges and our curses, you know. All of us have that. That's why it's not useful to be envious of people. You know, you're a young man, you see someone drive by in a Ferrari with a blonde, and you think, my God, he's got everything. And, you know, the woman in the car is a prostitute who's got a cocaine addiction, and her life is just one catastrophe after another. And he's had to lie and cheat his way into this position, and he's afraid that everything's going to come crashing down on him, and that's what you're jealous of. And it's just not that profound. You don't want someone else's fate. Man, your fate's enough, and your adventure's enough. It's plenty. It's more than you can ever fully realize. And so that's also part of the reason that we all believe that the individual has some intrinsic dignity. It's don't be so sure that your position and your room is so damn trivial. It might be your attitude towards it that's trivial. And if you're in dire straits and dire circumstances, just look at how much opportunity you have to make things better. So, not that it's easy. You don't even want it to be easy. Well, you need to contemplate your own malevolence because that helps you understand who you are and who you could be. And you could be something absolutely brutal and terrible. So you need to contemplate your own malevolence so that you understand who you are. And that means you have to contemplate malevolence as such, because you're not only who you are, you're who you could be, for better or worse. And I actually think it's a lot easier to start to understand who you could be if you were better, if you deeply understand who you could be if you were worse, and who you might be to the degree that you're blind to that worse presently. So you think, oh my God, I could be that malevolent, a force for ill. That's horrible, but highly compelling and plausible given my understanding of my own character. I'm way deeper on the negative end than I thought, much more closely aligned with the forces of hell than I presumed. That's easy to swallow factually, right? You think, yeah, there's evidence for that. It's not so easy to swallow emotionally. It's a bitter pill, to say the least. And so I don't think that you can contemplate the good without contemplating the evil first. I don't think it has the depth. You know, they say that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's something like that necessary fear. It's like, well, I don't want to be a monster. Okay, well, how much of a monster are you? I'm as monstrous as I have been, so that's on me, conscience-wise, but like I'm also the same being that's been as monstrous as any being throughout history. Nothing human is foreign to me. Lots of my clients, my clinical clients, are too agreeable. And they're generally women because women are more agreeable than men, but not always, because I've had agreeable men as clients as well. And what happens is they're resentful and they don't know how to stand up for themselves, and it's because they're very compassionate by nature. And so if you're entering into a negotiation with them, they'll let you win. Well, that's not so good, because you know you need to win too. Especially if you're in an organization of adults where there's a struggle, right? When you have kids, you can let them win, especially infants. You have to let them win, and that's partly why compassion is so necessary. But as a basis for negotiation between adults, it's like, sorry, it's insufficient. You have to be a bit of a monster so that you can say no. Well, let's toughen you up. Let's put you in a position where you can bargain. Let's teach you how to assert yourself and stand up for yourself, and that's assertiveness training, and it's a huge chunk of psychotherapy. And you need to learn it. It's like, because part of how you regulate your interactions with other people is to negotiate. And you cannot negotiate unless you can say no. You can't do it. And it causes conflict to say no, and if you don't like conflict, which is basically the definition of being agreeable, then you can't tolerate the conflict, and so then you can't negotiate on your own behalf, and so then you keep losing, and you're bullied, and it's not good. Then you get resentful, and it's really not good. So you have to develop your inner monster a little bit, and then that makes you a better person, not a worse person. It's weird, but that's just how it is. If you've been victimized, you're naive and you've been victimized. The way out of that is to no longer be naive and to no longer be victimized. And that means that you see this reflected in the Harry Potter idea, for example, that the reason that Harry Potter can withstand Voldemort is because he's got a piece of him, right? He's been touched by it. And the way that you keep the psychopaths at bay is to develop the inner psychopath so that you know one when you see one. Right, but that's a voluntary thing. It's like a set of tools that you have at your disposal, which is full knowledge of evil.
There's this old idea that if you look into the darkness enough, you'll find something that compensates for it, right? And that emerges out of the darkness that's greater and more powerful than the darkness. And that part of the looking into the dark side of yourself is you find the power that enables you to deal with mortality. If they've been coddled and their ambition has been squelched and everything about them that's aggressive has been shamed out of existence, that's part of that attraction of that dark fantasy, right? And then they see that aggression manifesting itself and in a creative form. It's not surprising that they're going to try to imitate that. It's part of that desire to bring that shadow out of the shadows and into the light. There's two pathways to the development of the shadow, and they're tightly allied with one another. The fundamental pathway is truth, and that's to face the bitter truth about yourself. But to break that down more particularly, you might think about that as the capacity to observe your own resentment. You're going to be resentful and bitter in many situations because you don't get what you want. And if you watch that resentment and bitterness, you'll see that it produces fantasies that can be unbelievably dark. And that can be very frightening, and you might not want to admit to yourself that you're actually capable of having fantasies like that, or impulses like that, or aggressive feelings like that. But the thing is that if those aggressive feelings and impulses and fantasies are integrated into your character, it's like you're opening up a dialogue with a part of yourself that can be very forceful and strong and dangerous. And it's really useful to be dangerous, because if you can be dangerous, you often don't have to be. Or you're oppressing yourself, then you got to notice that you're feeling oppressed. Then you have to notice that you're feeling resentful and angry and bitter. And then you have to decide what it is that you need to do in order to remove from yourself that bitterness. And that usually means that there's something that you have to say. And then you have to say it because your soul depends on it. And not only does your soul depend on it, I would say the fate of the world depends on it, because you might be wrong, and then you should be straightened out. Maybe you're just being whiny and you have to talk to somebody about that. But it may be that you're actually detecting something wrong, some tyranny that's directed towards you and other people, and it's like your moral obligation to speak up about it. And so many workplaces become toxic, to use a terrible cliche, because the people in them won't speak up for what they actually want, or they speak up too late and then they're all twisted up about it, and they're torturing other people because they're so unhappy, and so forth and so on. So, practical approach for developing your shadow fundamentally is radical honesty.
Why not you? Why can't you be the person that changes everything? The innovator, the trailblazer, the disruptor, the person that makes a decision that I will not be the weakest link in the chain of a dynasty. Why can't you be the one that makes history? Why can't you be the one that wins again? Why can't you be the one that overcomes the demons that have haunted a family for generations? Why not you? We're always there for everybody else. And I just want to ask the question, and it's not an invitation into narcissism or to be egocentric or to be self-centered, but why not you? Why does everybody else get the best of your time and the best of your energy? Why is it that you are appointed and present and seated in the chairs to support everybody? But when it comes to you, you don't believe. You don't support you. You don't invest in you. You don't believe you. You don't see it for you. You've got to stop waiting for the opportunity to come along, and you've got to learn to master the art and the privilege of creating the opportunity. Stop limiting yourself to what can come to you and focus on what needs to come from you. There is no storm, there is no hurricane, there's no tornado, there's no giant. There's nothing that is going to stop me. I am determined, I am committed, and I don't care if this thing takes everything I have. I'm going after it. If it breaks me, it's making me into something I could have never been. Who you are right now has gotten you as far as you're going to get. So you got to become another person to get there. I did it when you thought I was crazy. I did it when you thought I should have quit. I did it when you thought I should have got more sleep. When you thought I should have went on vacation. I was willing to look crazy. I was willing to look foolish. I was willing to look like I wasn't going down the right path just to accomplish what it is that was set before me. What is your purpose? What is your destiny? What is your assignment in this season? Are you completely sold out to it? Are you all in? Have you poured yourself out like a drink offering? Are you willing to die to achieve it? And so let me look crazy for a season, and I'll live the rest of my life like a legend.
If things could be set up for me the way I need them to be, and if I could be who I needed to be, what would that look like? And you can figure that out for yourself, and then instantly you have a judge. And I also think that's part of the reason people don't do it, right? Why don't people look up and move ahead? And the answer is, well, you start formulating an ideal, you formulate a judge, it's pretty easy to feel intimidated in the face of your own ideal. Then it's really easy to destroy the ideal instead of to try to pursue it, because then you get rid of the judge. But it's way better, lower the damn judge if it's too much. Like if your current ambition is crushing you, then maybe you're playing the tyrant to yourself, and you should tap down your ambitions, not get rid of them by any stretch of the imagination, but at least put them more reasonably within your grasp. You don't have to leap from point 1 to point 50 in one leap, right? You can do it incrementally. And then I would say the idea here is that as you do that, you shape yourself ever more precisely into something that can withstand the tragedy of life and that can act as a beacon to the world. That's the right way of thinking about it. Maybe first to your friends and then to your family. It's like it's a hell of a fine ambition, and there's no reason that it can't happen. Life is definitely difficult, there's no doubt about that, and it's unfair, and there's inequality and all of those things, and people are subject to all sorts of terrible things. But I also wonder, if you weren't actively striving to make things worse, just how much better could they be? Make no mistake about it, like the first noble truth of Buddhism, life is suffering. This is true, and it's worse than that because it's suffering contaminated by malevolence. That's the baseline. And so that's very pessimistic. But the optimistic part is that you are so damn tough you can actually not only deal with that, you can improve it. It's like, well, that's a horrible situation, but it turns out that I'm armed for the task. Well, that's a great thing for people to know. And I think the fact that we're armed for the task is even more true than the fact that life is catastrophe contaminated by malevolence. We're stronger than things are terrible. And things are pretty terrible. So that means we're pretty damn strong.
Wow.
Yes, it's a very good thing to know. And it's not naive optimism. It's a very different thing. It's like, no, things are terrible. They're brutal. And you are so damn tough, you can't believe it. Why is self-sabotage such a feature? Okay, here's a couple of reasons. The first is that there's a lot of responsibility with success, right? So if you say yes to things and you do a good job and you bear a large burden, then you have to carry it. And a lot of that might be success, but failure is a lot easier than success. Plus you can complain about it and whine about it and be a victim and, garner all sorts of kudos from yourself and others that way. So there's that. People have a hard time not having the kind of contempt that borders on self-hatred for themselves, partly because, we are fragile and mortal creatures and prone to error and malevolence, and we know that of ourselves better than anyone else. And because we know that, we're prone to punish ourselves and to think ill of ourselves. And, one of the things I learned from Jung was that the injunction to do unto your neighbor as you would have him do unto you was an equation rather than a statement about how to be nice to people, and that you have an ethical obligation to treat yourself as if you're a person of value, even if you don't really feel that you owe yourself the same treatment that you would give someone that you cared for and loved. And that's a really hard thing to learn, because you kind of have to detach yourself from your knowledge of all your insufficiencies and your flaws and treat yourself with dignity and respect. At least the dignity and respect due someone who's faulty that could conceivably learn. And that's a very difficult ethical lesson to learn. It's easier to beat yourself continually on the back of the head with a club and to feel it's justified given how much you know about how wretched and useless you are. So let's say there's two reasons. One is that you don't want the responsibility, so it's not really self-sabotage, it's just avoidance of responsibility and consequent failure. And the second is punishment, self-punishment that seems only just given what you know about all your pathology and error and insufficiencies.
There's no saying, oh, the world is safe. It's not safe, not at all. It's not safe. The fact that you think it's safe means that you were living in an unconscious bubble that was sort of provided to you by your culture. It's a gift, and now that's been shattered. And so now what do you do? Well, the answer is you retreat until you're in your house and there's nowhere you can go. You're the ultimate frozen rabbit, right? And your life is hell because you can't function. The alternative is, let's take apart the things you're afraid of. Let's expose you to them, carefully and programmatically. And then you'll learn that you're actually tougher than you think. You never knew that. And maybe you didn't want to take on the responsibility because, people play a role in their own demise, so to speak. When you had opportunity to go out and explore or withdraw because you were afraid, you chose to withdraw because you were afraid. So it's not only that you were overprotected often, it's that you were willing to take advantage of the fact that you were overprotected and run back there whenever you had the opportunity. So maybe you're a kid in the playground, right? And you're having some trouble with other kids. And in the back of your mind, I should deal with this myself. But you go and tell your mom and get her to intervene. And you know that that's not right. You know that you're breaking the social contract. But it's easier. And so that's what you do. You run off to an authority figure and hide behind the Great Father, right? Roughly speaking. Well, the problem with that is you don't learn how to do it yourself. So then you have to relearn it painfully when you're 40. So then you take people out. You say, well, what are you afraid of? Rank it from 1 to 10. The thing you're least afraid of we'll call number 10. So we'll start with that. Okay, well, I'm afraid of elevators. Okay, well, let's look at a picture of an elevator. Let's have you imagine being in an elevator. Let's go out to an elevator and let you watch the terrible jaws of death open, because that's how you're responding to it symbolically, right? And you're going to do that at the closest proximity you can manage. You find out, you go do that, it works. You're nervous as hell, especially from an anticipatory perspective, shaking. You go out, you stop, you watch it happen, and you actually calm down. You do that 10 times and it no longer bothers you. Well, what you've learned that you didn't die, but more importantly than that, you've learned that you could withstand the threat of death. That's what you've learned. and then you move a little closer, and then you move a little closer, and then you move a little closer, and finally you're back in what's no longer the elevator from a symbolic perspective. It's a tomb, right? It's a place of enclosure and isolation. And you learn, turns out I can withstand that. And then you're much more together, much more confident.
Oh, everyone deals with that. Every time you make a status shift as you move upwards, of course you have imposter syndrome, because when you first make a transition into a new role, you are an imposter because you're a beginner. You don't know what you're doing. And that doesn't mean you're a liar or a fake. And it doesn't mean you should presume more knowledge than you have. It's, what did Nietzsche say? Every great man is an actor of his own ideal. And that feeds into the imposter syndrome in some sense. If you want to move to the next stage, at some point you have to act like you're already there when you're just barely started. And that's not a lie. You know, it's the willingness, it can be, and it can degenerate into a lie, especially if you presume more than you know. But if you move, you know, let's say you move from being an undergraduate to a graduate student. Well, all the other graduate students and the professors know that you're just a beginning graduate student. They're not going to expect as much from you as they would from a more seasoned graduate student. So you have some leeway that's genuine, but you are, you know, the low-rung occupier of that role. And of course you're going to feel like you're an imposter if you have any sense, because you're just barely there. You just made the transition. That's okay. You know, that's not a problem. First of all, you have to understand that everyone with any sense who isn't narcissistic feels that. And it's actually an indication of your mental health and your competence, as long as that doesn't become crippling. It shouldn't knock you out. I'm such a phony. Well, don't be a phony. That's the first thing. If you're dealing with competent people and you admit your ignorance, the competent people never judge you harshly for that, as long as you've been paying attention. So in my classes, for example, people were often afraid to ask questions. And so sometimes I would point to people and ask them if they had a question, especially the quieter types. And they'd be afraid to ask the question because, well, they're revealing their ignorance. And they would assume they're the only person in the room that's that ignorant, but they're not, because if they were paying attention and they had a question, the probability that half the class had that question was really high. It's different if you're not paying attention. And so you can be ignorant. You can be an ignorant newbie, and you can even ask the questions that are necessary to ask in that position and sort of reveal your inadequacy. And as long as you're dealing with competent people and you've been paying attention, they're just going to answer your questions. And then you only have to be ignorant once. That's the thing about asking a stupid question. You only have to ask it once, then you're no longer stupid.
We have this idea in our society, and it's a very profound idea, and that idea is that the ultimate truth is scientific truth. That tells us about the nature of the world, and it does that in a final way in some sense. There's no brooking any arguments about it. And the physicists have got it right, and that's why they can make hydrogen bombs, and that's a pretty good demonstration of their being right. But you don't act as if that's true. And you watch things and pay attention to things and are captivated by things that aren't predicated on those assumptions. And it seems to me that there is a problem of what the world is made out of, but there's a bigger problem, and that's the problem of how you should conduct yourself in the world. And that's really what you want to know. People want to know that more than anything. Because you need to know. It's like, here you guys are in university. It's like, you don't know what you're doing. I mean, some of you know more than others, but you're at the beginning of your life, and life is very complex and chaotic, and it isn't exactly obvious, you know, what kind of relationship you should form, or what sort of character you should develop, or what you're going to do for a job, or what's the meaning of life? That's a good one. What's the meaning of life? Well, and you know, people come to university, at least many of them, and that's kind of what they want to find out. In my clinical practice is that people just have a hell of a time if they don't slot in somewhere, you know. You think, I got to go to work at 9 in the morning, and you know, I've got this rigid schedule. It's like,
It's probably a good idea to be grateful for that, because what I've noticed is that if people pull out from those externally scaffolded systems, they drift. They get depressed, they get anxious, they don't know what to do with themselves. You know, they're kind of like sled dogs with no sled. And we're kind of like sled dogs, as far as I can tell, beasts of burden. Like, we need a load, man. We need a load. The question is, what sort of load do you need? And here's why I think we need that. You know, I've been thinking about how to figure out what's real for a long time. And because I'm an existentialist, I'm operating under the presupposition that you can tell what people believe by watching how they act. I don't care what they say. I don't care what their statements are about their view of reality. Because the relationship between that and their actual actions is certainly not perfect, and sometimes doesn't even exist. One thing I've noticed is that no one argues with their own pain. Everyone who hurts acts as if they believe that pain is real.
When you're a naive person, you trust people because you think that people are good. And then maybe someone comes along and hurts you and you think, oh no, people aren't good, I can't trust anyone. And then maybe you're paranoid and you think that people hate you and don't like you and think you're trash and so forth. You don't trust people. But then you figure out, Jesus, this whole not trusting people isn't working out very well, because now I can't get anywhere. And if I ever do meet someone who's trustworthy and I don't trust them, then they're not going to get an opportunity to show me that they're trustworthy. And so then what happens is that you replace naive trust with courageous trust, and you put yourself out there despite the fact that people might hate you and don't like you and think you're trash. The other thing I would say that's more practical, I think you'd find that you only think that when you run away. My suspicions are if you went out and talked to people, like you'd have to have something to talk about, you know, but if you went out and talked to people, you'd find that those thoughts only bothered you for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you would get over them. You know, a lot of that's high neuroticism, and that's that in the big 5 aspect scale, that's withdrawal. You're experiencing a lot of withdrawal related negative emotions, anticipatory anxiety, and the best way to overcome that is to not avoid. So if you find yourself avoiding social situations, then you have to formulate a plan to stop doing that, and then over time your confidence will be boosted.
The thing that I realized was that after a while, if you continue to disprove your imposter syndrome in the real world, you have a challenge, you're adamant that you probably won't or might not or don't deserve to get past it, and then you do, after a while, you have to admit to yourself that your imposter syndrome has nothing to do with your capacity and everything to do with your addiction about feeling like an imposter. And
well, and that does change as people age. Generally speaking, they become more agreeable, more conscientious, and lower in negative emotion. And some of that is that adaptation. You see that you've survived through various challenges, and then you can review that evidence to yourself, but also the people around you bolster you because they have confidence in you, and so their anxiety doesn't trigger your anxiety, and they'll remind you too, you know, you got this, you've done things in the past.
Such a wealth of data, you know, you've done it so many times.
And that does help. I mean, it does help. People get more confident as they get older and they accrue experience because of that. But it's subject to that underlying trait variability and sensitivity to negative emotion. I mean, there's been good psychometric analysis of self-esteem scales and neuroticism scales. And they're pretty much the same thing, reversed. And so, are you confident in yourself? Self-esteem. Do you lack confidence? Trait neuroticism. And so it is harder for some people because it takes more evidence for them to dampen down their response to threat. We're all adapted to some degree to the failure of induction, right? Just because something happened multiple times in the past does not mean necessarily that it will happen the next time. It's a very difficult problem to solve, how to regulate negative emotion, you know. But I would say that the best way we know is to keep facing challenges voluntarily, pay attention at a rate that works for you,
develop your competence. That actually stabilizes the environment around you, so it actually is less predictable and less threatening. Plus, you accrue that evidence, and you get the social support for doing so. That's your best pathway forward.
When you're on your phone and scrolling, and I think scrolling itself is the major issue, when you're scrolling, you're essentially putting yourself into new context after new context after new context, and the brain has to adjust to all of that. The circuits in the brain that are required for setting and maintaining focus are inhibited by the process of deliberately shifting one's focus over and over and over throughout the day. If one is constantly moving their attention from one thing to the next, it undermines the stability of all the circuitry in the brain that's responsible for prolonged focus. Now, I partake in social media, so do you, but the scroll function is a practice of shifting focus. The human brain is an incredible organ because it's a map of our experience. It has certain parts that are hardwired that govern our heart rate and control of our heart rate, or control of our breathing, certain immune functions, and on. But then a vast percentage of our human brain is open real estate that is designated as one function or another depending on what happens to you during development. But it's so important that we understand this, because you think, what is the ability to think? Well, the ability to think is constrained by the number of different senses I'm trying to place on a bunch of different things. The challenge is that we've brought an infinite number of sensory experiences into the thing that you're looking at through the device that you're holding.
So the narrowing of your perspective hasn't helped you to narrow the distractions.
That's right. Cognitive space is still infinite, even though the spatial limitation of where you're placing your attention is very restricted. So the fact that you have so many competing thoughts has everything to do with that. Plasticity of the brain, mapping of the brain for one particular sensory experience or function, say swiping or the ability to switch back and forth between multiple screens, is always at the expense of some other potential function. You can't do everything. The reason I'm so bullish about people understanding a little bit of mechanism behind the checklist of things to do is that I do think that when people understand mechanism, it gives them flexibility over the so-called protocols. And I think it also allows them to customize those things for themselves. Let's face it, if you want to go online now and just say, what are the top 10 things I can do to improve my sleep? And you get a list, and you put those on your refrigerator, put them next to your bed. Why doesn't everyone just do that? It's because the way that people go about learning information strongly drives whether or not they apply that information. The thoughts, and by extension, the emotions, but really the thoughts that you have right now, your ability to focus right now, is strongly driven by the inputs you received in the preceding hours and even days. So one of the things that's really interesting about focus and attention, and a lot of the habits have to do with, I don't want to procrastinate, I want to do this. We can talk about exercise, but let's talk about cognitive stuff. It's very, very clear that if you have a hard time getting into a bout of work or even staying focused, there's a very good chance, I believe, that your breaks between work and what you were doing before work was too stimulating. I'm a big advocate for boring breaks. And I'm a big advocate for silence before and after bouts of work for a couple of reasons. Let's think about it on the back end. Let's say you're trying to learn something or read a book or just do something that you're not reflexively doing. You want to create this habit. It's very clear that neuroplasticity, yes, requires alertness, requires focus. You need sleep later that night. I've been beating that drum for a number of years. It's also clear that reflection on what you were doing at some later time, just kind of like post-learning reflection, walking to your car, sitting on the plane for a second, thinking about a podcast you did earlier or something you heard or a discussion, strongly reinforces the memories and the ability to work with the memories of new information. And this is something that we've given up largely because of our smartphones. You're constantly bringing in new sensory information. All the data, I did an episode on how to best study and learn. I went to the data to find out, because I have my methods, but that doesn't mean they're the best methods. Reading, rereading, note-taking, highlighting, it's all fine. but it turns out the biggest lever is to self-test at some point away from the material. So testing is not just something for evaluation of others, it's a way that we should think, how much can I remember about that conversation? What was tricky? Okay, I don't remember that piece. I'm gonna go back and look it up. All learning is, and this will sound like a giant duh, but all learning is anti-forgetting. How do we know this? Because if you have people read a passage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times versus one time and they self-test, one time and self-testing, significantly better.
Learning is repeated recall, not repeated exposure.
Yes, beautiful, right, exactly. Guys like him, guys like James Clear, they have a real, when I say unconscious genius, I mean clearly they put thought into and structure into what they teach, but the neuroscience supports everything you just said, which is what he just said. And reflecting on what you were trying to do or learn or solve, even if you don't remember, even if you're still puzzled by it, is so vitally important to the anti-forgetting process. Okay, now in terms of actually being able to focus, actually being able to do work, it's so clear that thoughts, and this is the beautiful statements and work of a woman named Jenny Grow, who's at Duke University, who's a neuroscientist, been studying sensory integration for a long time. I've long thought about, and I think we now understand as a field, what sensations are. So sensations are the physical stimuli in the environment, photons of light, mechanical pressure, volatile odorants in the environment that lead to sight, touch, smell, etc. How that gets converted into chemical and electrical signals in the brain, we understand as a field. We understand sensation. We understand perception. Perception is which of those sensations you happen to be paying attention to, okay? We understand emotions now more as a subset of something that we think of more broadly as states that are set by your autonomic nervous system, how alert you are, how not alert you are, and then emotions are kind of layered on top of that. We know what they are neurobiologically and psychologically. And behaviors, we know what they are. And then there's the don't go behaviors, the suppression of behavior. And then there are memories, right? But for the longest time, it's been unclear, what are thoughts? Like what are they? Are they just like spontaneous geysering up of memories, or like what's going on there? And Jenny Grow, I think, has the absolute best description of these. And this is based on experimentation. If we seed some idea, so let's say I say to you, think about a dog. Okay, what kind of dog is it?
Golden Retriever.
Golden Retriever, okay. So as you think about the Golden Retriever, like what other things come to mind about the Golden Retriever?
It's got a little neckerchief on.
Okay.
Red neckerchief.
Great, red neckerchief. Like what else about Golden Retriever?
Fluffy.
Fluffy, okay, so there's a tactile thing, okay. Jenny Grow's and others' data point to the fact that thoughts basically start with some seed element, some noun, some pronoun, some thing, some event. And then what the brain does is it essentially starts to call on more and more sensations and starts layering those in. More and more prior sensory events. It's red handkerchief, okay, brain, it's fluffy, there's a tactile. And that thoughts really are the layering on of more and more sensory memories, and thoughts are really a layering of the senses in abstract thought space. Now, this is not meant to, make something from nothing, but it's so important that we understand this, because you think, what is the ability to think? Well, the ability to think is constrained by the number of different senses I'm trying to place on a bunch of different things. And so that's how we navigate through environments, which is what Jenny Grow's main work is about, how you find yourself in space. I can't look at everything in this garage. I have to focus on certain things, find the Phillips head screwdriver, go over there, and you're discarding all the other information. Now, when you think about sitting down to do work or to learn something or prepare a podcast, it is so important that you limit the number of sensory inputs coming in, not just during that event, but before. Because the sensory stimulus that kind of sets off this cascade of layering in more and more sensory memories and understanding is begun before you sit down to read your book. This is why you read a portion of a book and then you're like, oh wait, I wasn't even paying attention. Your brain is still working with the sensory inputs from before. It's not thinking about them consciously. So this is vitally important. If you go back and you look at the history of attention and thinking, and you can find these incredible pictures that they would give kids who had trouble, probably had ADHD or just kind of rambunctious boys in most cases. And they literally gave them helmets with 2 eye holes so they couldn't look at anything else.
Like
they couldn't
blinkers
hear anyone else, right. Used to be, kid with the hoodie on and the cap, and you'd write, Now in China, they're doing some very interesting experiments of having kids stare literally at a focal point on the wall for a number of minutes before beginning their work. Sounds a little extreme, a little military, but one thing that I've been doing before I prepare to do any writing, any podcasting, any work is I try and make myself as bored as possible. I try and remove as much sensory input as possible. I might think about my breathing because it's hard to not think about anything, but I really have started to limit the amount of sensory information coming into my space. I have an entire floor of where I live now. I live in kind of an odd structure now, but the entire bottom floor is a no phone zone. Once or twice I've brought my phone down there, but it's a no phone zone. I'm going down the stairs, there are no phones in there. I'm trying to figure out how I can have no internet there. Doesn't matter if you're in an empty box. If you are not good at clearing the slate before you try and focus, you're gonna have a very hard time for understandable reasons. In fact, I'm amazed that anyone can think at all. I'm amazed that anyone can focus at all. I don't believe everyone has ADHD. I think we've just not understood what thoughts are built up from. And once you understand, you go, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. Am I supposed to walk around with my eyes closed and not take in any sensory input? No. But am I supposed to take in an infinite number of novel items through this device? In fact, Mike Easter, the author of The Comfort Crisis, told me something super scary. The people who developed the algorithms for social media borrowed heavily from the casinos. And I didn't realize that some years ago, slot machines were like a small fraction of the total casino income, maybe like 10, 20%. Now it's 80%. And it was one guy who watched his kid playing video games who realized that the kids would play video games for hours and hours and hours, and what they were playing for was novelty. And so they switched the slot machines in casinos, on his suggestion, to, instead of just spooling numbers and fruit or whatever it was, because they're now electronic, you can get a near infinite number of combinations of novel items, and people will play while losing for novelty and think they're winning. The brain is tricked into thinking that it's winning. And so at some level, like, I love social media, teach on social media. I partake in it as a consumer and a creator there, but I think we need to really scruff ourselves and go, okay, I need to read this book. I need to write this chapter. I need to do this drawing. And you'll notice once you drop into that trench, the brain has these attractor states. It's like a ball bearing on a flat surface. As you get more into a thought trench or activity trench, it's like that ball bearing drops into what's essentially a deep valley. And it's actually hard to leave. You'll notice you're walking out, and unless you pick up your phone, you'll still be thinking about that. And this is how the brain works. The brain is not working in step functions. The brain, none of us are supposed to do the same thing all day long, and none of us are supposed to be able to think and focus easily. You just have to ride that sort of layering on of thoughts, going from bored to sensory input to deeper and deeper, and then work for bouts of 90 minutes or a couple of hours, and then give yourself a little bit of time, pause, reflect. And it doesn't mean you can't have a conversation, but people are like texting in between. It's unbelievable what we've done to hamstring ourselves against being able to think. The good news is, as Goggins would say, nowadays it's very easy to be spectacularly good in pretty much any field. You just have to do what no one else is doing. Now, he's an extreme case, and I have immense admiration for David. I mean, he's just so David, but if you want to be the best in your class at anything, or best in class at pretty much anything, it's become so much easier now. You just have to not constantly be projecting things out to the world or paying attention to what other people are doing.
I've got written on my whiteboard on my fridge at the moment, the 5 most common deathbed regrets. And it's things like, I wish that I'd not worked as much. I wish I'd let myself be happy. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. It will be unbelievably surprising to me if in 40 years' time, I wish I'd spent less time on my phone isn't on there. I would bet pretty much everything that I have that would probably appear on average on people's 5 top deathbed regrets. I wish I'd spent less time on my phone. And we can see this happening in front of us. And the best way that you can tell that this is going to continue to happen is that you can reflect on what you did over the last week. And one of the most common things that you wish that you'd done less of over the last week was, I got captured. I did a couple of YouTube holes or TikTok scrolls or Instagram whatevers. And you know that this is happening in the micro. Spread that across a lifetime, I think that very much we're going to look back at this, and hopefully there is some kind of solution. Maybe it's Neuralink. Maybe, we have a way that we can kind of ethically engage with technology and get the communication and the stimulation and the exploration of different ideas and communities. But yeah, right now kind of feels maybe a little bit like when cigarettes first came out, like your doctor smokes Camels, like nobody knew what the bad effects of this were. They didn't know long-term what it was going to cause. And I was, I think, incorrectly categorizing people's phone use as an addiction. And I think that you said it's much more like a compulsion.
Right.
And that is a child that's asleep or nearly asleep, compulsively scrolling through their phone.
An obsession is mental. This is the classic definition. A compulsion is a behavior. But the compulsion in classic OCD doesn't relieve the obsession. It actually exacerbates it.
The payoff.
Right.
Lack of.
So you're not, it's sort of like an itch that you scratch and it itches more. Right. And there is something like that with I don't want to say social media, but with phone scrolling. Now that said, I mean, of my waking hours, most of it is spent foraging for, organizing, or dispersing information. And much of that is done on the phone or computer.
Yep.
But I do read books, hard books, meaning physical books.
When you're foraging, you spend enough time on the internet and you do find something that gives you that, oh, wow, I never knew about that before. And it's that sort of needle in a haystack that you're looking through. And that trigger of, wow, I found so I can talk about it on a podcast. This is really interesting to me. That is the carrot, I think, that gets dangled for very many people who want to feel better about their social media use and think, well, okay, yeah, I wasted 90 minutes, but I did get that thing out of it. I read that Substack post, or I found this new person that I really care about. The variable schedule reward, intellectual satisfaction is also in there, right? It's not just the shock.
Sure.
It's not just the cute.
Also in the library, I love libraries, and I'd spend so much time when I was a student and graduate student, and you'd find something. And it's like, I'd look around, like, did anyone, did you see that? Did you see that? But since I was a little kid, I was discovering stuff in books and then talking about it to everybody, even if they didn't want to hear. And so I was professing from a young age in class on Mondays and things. So for me, it's hardwired into my system by now. And I think that, I do think that social media holds certain gems. I think we're talking about like mining for gems of social interaction too. I've gotten to know some people through social media where it's really enriched my life. I've reconnected with some people. It's really enriched my life. It's allowed me to connect the dots, going backward in ways I hadn't anticipated. And I think going forward, if you're asking about the kids in the video that you showed me, or you're talking about adults or anyone, it's the success is largely going to be determined by who has the most self-discipline.
What if I told you that it's not over? That you're not finished? That you've got work to do, and that destinies are hinged on the decision that you are about to make? What if I told you that what tried to break you trained you, what tried to delay you disciplined you, and even the isolation that you've been navigating has sharpened you? What if I told you that you are not late, you are loaded with potential? Average numbs your hunger while stealing your assignment. Average brings us into prisons and pits and caves where we lose our desperation, where we are no longer hungry for a quality of life. We are no longer desperate. We no longer see the light at the end of the tunnel. If you've lost that fuel, that faith, that fire, and after everything you've been through, it seems as though average is suffocating the hope out of you. You did not fail, and you're not finished. Average attracts applause from people who settled. They will clap for you, not because you are great, but because you make them comfortable. Your life, your endeavors, your assignment should make somebody uncomfortable. It should interfere and interrupt the status quo. Sometimes it's just you and God, where you got to put the work in alone. And you've got to train your body and your mind. You've got to bring yourself to peak condition. You got to develop your strength and increase your capacity and your endurance. And you've got to stretch, and you've got to push, and you got to pull, and you got to leap, and you got to run. And sometimes you will grow weary. And there will be days when you don't want to get out of bed, when you don't want to eat, you don't have the energy to think, and nobody calls you, and nobody texts you, and nobody checks on you. And very few believe that you will ever come out of this darkness. You will ever come out of this hole. But you have to believe. Because it is our beliefs that determine our behavior. If I can't change my outputs, it's because I haven't changed my inputs. Everything that's coming in, everything that I believe, everything that I see will determine what I do. If I can't do it, if I haven't done it, if it seems impossible and I won't even try, then something's off with my belief system. And I just pray that after you've listened to me, that something is sparked on the inside of you to take a deeper dive into who you are. Accept the reality that there will be seasons in your life where you will need to walk alone. Now is the time to weep and work. You may be hurting, but work. You may be bleeding, but build. You may be tired, but get up. It's time. It's time to labor with vision and build with conviction to give birth to something that will still speak when the dust has settled over your bones. Greatness is not loud at the beginning. Sometimes greatness is quiet, and it will demand separation from everything that attempts to knock you off course. There is no tomorrow. There is no plan B. I am completely devoted to my level 1 priorities. To many, it will seem as though I've lost my mind, but it is right at that point where the world changers emerge. You can hate all you want to, but I understood the work that was required to put in. I'm consistent, I'm ambitious, I'm flexible, I'm adaptable, I'm decisive, and I'm determined. Come on, I got everything I need to go to the next level. And I just want to ask anybody listening to me, why not you?
Well, if you're harmless, you're not virtuous. You're just harmless. You're like a rabbit. A rabbit isn't virtuous. It's just can't do anything except get eaten. It's not virtuous. If you're a monster and you don't act monstrously, then you're virtuous. But you also have to be a monster. Well, you see this all the time. Harry Potter's like that too. It's like he's flawed, he's hurt, he's got evil in him. He can talk to snakes, man. He breaks rules all the time. But, you know, he has a good reason for breaking the rules. And if he couldn't break the rules, him and his little clique of rule-breaking, you know, troublemakers, if they didn't break the rules, they wouldn't attain the highest goal. So it's very peculiar, but it's a very, very common mythological notion. You know, the hero has to be a monster. I was at my sister-in-law's house once, and her son was running around. He's about 4, very precocious, very verbal, very intelligent, running around with a night hat on and a sword. So he's engaged in this pretty intense play world. And when he goes to sleep, he puts the night hat on his pillow and the sword by his pillow. And at the same time, he's having night terrors. So he's waking up, and it had been for a number of weeks, waking up screaming, but he doesn't know why. There's some things that aren't going so well in the household, and the parents get divorced shortly afterwards. Okay, so that's what's going on underneath, right? And he's also going to go to kindergarten, and so he's about to go into the world. And so he's coping with this. I'm watching him zoom around as this knight and thinking that's pretty cool. And that night he woke up and was screaming. And so we were all at breakfast the next morning. And I said, "Did you dream anything?" And he got really intense. And he said, "Yes, I had a dream. I was out on this field and all these like dwarfs came up to me. They were only about as high as my knees and they didn't have any arms. They had powerful legs and they had beaks. And whenever he moved anywhere, they would jump at him with their beaks. And there were lots of them. And everyone like just said nothing at breakfast. It was like, and he was right into this story, eh? And then he said, yeah, and then in the background there was a dragon. And every time the dragon puffed out smoke, it would turn into these dwarves. It's like, oh man, kid, you really got a problem there. You got beak things that are biting you, and you can kill them, and that's fine. But then there's the dragon just puffing out new ones. So it's like a hydra problem, right? The old hydra is the serpent. You cut off one head, 7 more grow. It's not a good thing. And it's such a cool dream because it really portrayed this class of all possible monsters problem. So you've got the specific monsters, and that's a problem. So you've got to get rid of them. But that's not the problem. The problem is that there's something in the background that's just generating monsters like mad. And so I said to him, what do you think you could do about that? And that's a loaded question, right? That's like leading the witness in a trial. You don't get to ask a question like that because it implies the answer. What could you do about that is not any different than saying you could do something about that. Right, so I hinted at that as a possibility, and his eyes lit up. Now you remember, he's already running around as a knight, eh? So he kind of already knew what to do because he had the whole sword and the hat, and he said, I'd get my dad, and then I'd jump up on top of the dragon, and I'd poke out both of its eyes with my sword, and then I'd go right down its throat to the firebox where the fire comes out, and I'd carve out a piece of the firebox, and then I'd use that as a shield. And I thought, yes! Right. Man, it's so smart, eh? Because he got the thing instantly. So imagine, first of all, he thought, okay, I have to go to the heart of the problem, right? And really to the heart, not to the dragon, but right down the damn thing's gullet, right to the place where the fire was actually being created. Because it was there you could find the shield. And that he'd take this thing that was fireproof and make a shield out of it. And so that was just dead, bloody perfect. It was so cool. And you think, well, how could a kid come up with that? So you could say that, like, the kid already had within him not only the capacity to represent not only the monster, but the class of all possible monsters, and the fact that the problem wasn't monsters, the problem was that monsters could continually be generated. It's a way worse problem. And then the answer to that isn't to kill an individual monster. The answer to that is go to the source of the monstrous itself and defeat it. What you might do about a particular monster is hide or go out and get rid of it. If it was just an actual animal, right? But that doesn't help because there's all the other potential predators that are still there. And so maybe you can go hunt all them down, but that doesn't help either because you can't hunt them all down. It's not very likely anyways. So instead, what you have to do is figure out how to configure yourself so that you're in the best possible position to fight off the monsters when they come. That's your best bet. All right, so now people are trying to figure this out forever. They're trying to figure out what's the answer to the problem of the class of all possible monsters. And so sacrifice is actually one way that you can tame the monsters. If you think about the monster as the set of all negative future potentialities. You make the proper sacrifices, those monsters stay at bay. But then there's heroism as an alternative too, which means the active confrontation of the class of all possible monsters and the building of yourself up into the sort of courageous person that can do that. One of the propositions of formal logic is, it's a fundamental proposition, is that something can't be itself and its opposite at the same time. It's like, that's true for some sorts of things. It's true for logical claims. But it's completely wrong in this particular situation because things are what they are and their opposite at the same time. And that makes it very, very difficult that's why a dragon hoards gold. It's like, what's up with that? Well, it'll eat you. And it will. But it has gold. Well, so what do you do about that? Because it's paradoxical demands. Well, what you want to do is face the dragon and get the damn gold. That's what you want to do. You know, in The Hobbit, he's called on a great adventure to go and find the dragon. And he has to become a thief in order to manage it. Well, that's pretty weird. You know, it's like, well, it's because as a good citizen, he's just not enough to conquer a dragon. He has to also become a bad citizen in some sense. He has to incorporate the part of himself that's monstrous, let's say, and develop that and hone it. And that's to say that, well, if you're harmless, you're not virtuous. You know, and you might say, well, it's too ambitious, it takes too much responsibility. It's like, yeah, those are definitely problems. And one of the things that I've figured out over the years is that if you offered the person the opportunity, you know, because people say, well, life doesn't really have any ultimate meaning. It's like, let's say it has an ultimate meaning. But that in order to experience that ultimate meaning, you have to take on ultimate responsibility for what you do. Well, that's a heavy price to pay to have a meaningful life. And you might say, well, there's no damn way I'm going to do that. I'll just go for the trivial, pointless perspective, which, you know, is kind of hard on me existentially, but it frees me up. I can do whatever the hell I want moment to moment. I don't have any ultimate responsibility. And so then you think, well, that's kind of a good deal. That raises this weird specter of doubt, which is, well, when you hear people talk about the ultimate futility of life, is it because life is ultimately futile? Or is it because they've decided that they would just as soon not adopt the responsibility, and they use that real decision, which is to not adopt the responsibility, they rationalize that by proposing that life is ultimately meaningless. Because scientifically, deterministically, there's nature and there's culture, and you are the deterministic product of the interaction between nature and culture. There's nothing else to you than that. That's that. But the mythological world doesn't say that. It says something different. It says that there's nature and culture, and then there's you. And the you that's in there has choices and a destiny, and that you actually affect the interplay of nature and culture in determining your own character. Perhaps the star that you're wishing upon is the wish that the hero will be born in your soul. It's something like that. You're aiming at an ideal, right? It's the ideal you, whatever that would be. Well, you can certainly figure out what it isn't. That's where you start, as far as I can tell. You know what you shouldn't be doing, and you could at least stop doing those things and then see what happens, And if you ask yourself, it's a meditative exercise, And you do this with the autobiography to some degree. It's like, okay, sit down for 10 minutes and have a little dialogue with yourself, like you actually wanted to know the answer, So you ask, well, I'm probably doing something stupid that if I quit doing, my life would be better, that I could quit doing, that I would quit doing. And maybe it's not a very big thing because you're not very disciplined, but maybe there's something. Ask yourself that question, man. You'll have an answer in no time flat. Like, well, I should stop doing this. It's like, yeah, I know, and I could, and I won't, or maybe I would, but if I did, I know my life would be better. It's like, you can figure that out immediately. And if you do that 100 times, well, you'll be in way better shape. So if you don't know what to do that's good, you could at least figure out what you shouldn't do that's just moronically, pathetic, and you can be sure you're doing like a dozen of those things at least. There's an idea that the divine element of the individual is the thing that uses language, communicative language, to call the world into being. And that is what we do. As far as we can tell, it's like you make a decision, you think it through, you talk it over with your friends, you plot a course, and the world manifests itself in relationship to your choice. That's why you have rights. Fundamentally, that's why the law has to respect you, is because you've got this spark of divinity in you that's transcendent, that nobody gets to transgress against. And you say, well, do you believe that? It's like, well, you act like you believe it. You treat other people like you believe it, or they're not very happy with you. So it depends on what you mean by believe. You act it out. Well, do you accept it as a proposition? Well, I don't care if you accept it as a proposition, frankly, because I think the best indicator of what you believe is how you act, not what you say. Because what do you know about what you know? Hardly anything. And so actions speak louder than words. And if you want to be treated properly by someone, what that means is that you want them to treat you as a valuable, autonomous entity. That's what you want.